Bill, we have a guest tonight, Matt Swan, one of my USF alumni, and Matt works in business intelligence with the Miami Heat. So welcome, Matt.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Hey, Matt, tell our listeners kind of, talk about business intelligence and what you do at the Heat.
Sure. So my position at the Heat is I'm a data analyst right now. And mostly my position comprises of building and managing our entire reporting platform. So what that means is we're exploring, every single aspect of the business when it comes to the NBA. So looking at ticket sales, looking at concessions. We have a really big digital presence. We have one of the best apps in the NBA. I think it's the best app in the NBA. So we do a lot of analytics around that and looking at the performance of that. And then we're branching out to continue to look at even new departments every day. So we've started to reach out to broadcasting and looking at their performance. We take a look at corporate partnerships and how do you value and how do you best find leads for new corporate partnerships. So we're pretty much looking at every single aspect of the business and trying our best to just, help those departments do their job better, do their job smarter, and give them insights that they previously haven't had before.
That sounds really interesting. What is the most interesting thing you learned this year?
Most interesting thing I've learned, I'd say it's just the value on mobile ticketing from an overall perspective of working in sports. Mobile ticketing has a huge impact moving forward. Basically, it allows you to capture uh, a lot more information as how fans are ingressing into games, and it also allows you to see capture a lot more data on that person. So you're able to know your fans better, to know how they're getting into games, how they want to get into games, and how they want to utilize their tickets better. Mobile ticketing is completely changing the game, and it also allows fans to get in and out of games a lot faster, which is obviously no one likes to wait in lines. So mobile ticketing overall is just a huge win for the sports industry.
Now, that's important. So how would you describe your transition from grad school into a job? How's that been?
It's been good. It's been good for me. It's definitely a lot better to not be doing homework, but being working in the sports industry has always been my dream. And one of the really good things about your program and what grad school allowed me to do is it allowed me to learn what I wanted to do in sports. A lot of times people would ask you, like, what do you want to do in sports? Like, do you want to work in sports? What do you want to do? And the answer was, I'm not sure yet. But grad school has allowed me to learn the sports business inside and out and learn a lot of different areas and learn how my interest in analytics can help transform those areas moving forward. So actually the biggest thing grad school has done for me is taught me the business of sports that I can now apply that knowledge in my everyday job.
Sweet. All right, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that you're a big NBA fan.
Yes.
NBA news this week. What's your take as a fan?
I think it's great for the NBA. The NBA is, in my opinion, one of the reasons I want to work in the NBA is I think it's the greatest league out there right now. And part of the reason is because it's nonstop, constantly going. The off season is not even really an off season anymore. It's constantly capturing the news. And obviously, like week one of the NBA offseason, we get a huge blockbuster trade. Anthony Davis going to team up with LeBron. I think it's a really good fit basketball wise. And it's one of those rare occasions where I actually think the Pelicans and the Lakers won the trade from each side. The Pelicans got a really good haul. And I know one of the reasons you asked me to be on this podcast was dinner a few weeks ago. I told you my prediction where I thought Kevin Durant and Kyrie were going to go to the Knicks, and then Anthony Davis would get traded to the Knicks, and it would be that three-headed monster in New York. Obviously, that's not going to happen now, but it just goes to show that the NBA is unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen. And I think LeBron and Anthony Davis is going to be a huge win for the NBA and fans just being able to watch that team up every day.
Jason, this is your hometown. Made the trade now. So what's going on in New Orleans?
Yeah, and Jason, one important point I think you made is I think it's really important that they did move Anthony Davis before getting Zion, because I think basically you have to bring Zion in with a clean slate, and you have to say, look, we know we might have done some things wrong with Anthony Davis, but we've learned from those mistakes. We have new management who knows how to handle star players. David Griffin, obviously, seems to have a really good relationship with LeBron, and LeBron was not happy to see David Griffin leave the Cavaliers. So I think that getting rid of him now allows you to basically wipe the slate clean, start over fresh with Zion, and I think New Orleans and Zion are now off to a better foot than they would have been if Anthony Davis was still around and kind of being a locker room cancer. Yeah, and the other thing that's interesting that I don't think I've ever seen it in the NBA since I've been closely following it. But they have, I think it's that pick, the 2024 pick. They have the right to defer it to the next year. So they can basically say, we think you're going to be worse next year and take a risk, and then they can defer it to the next year. So if, 2024 comes around, LeBron is still somehow superhuman, and the Lakers look really good, they've got some other stars surrounding him, then the Pelicans could say, hey, we're going to take our chances and hope it's, going to be a higher pick next year. So I think that's really interesting and a really cool sort of twist to the trade that David Griffin was able to throw in there. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, big fan of pick swaps. Pick swaps are pretty cool.
Hey, Jason, are there any rumors as to who they might trade the number 4 pick for?
I saw a rumor out there that people are at least trying to put the idea into existence that they could potentially trade that pick of maybe Brandon Ingram or something for Bradley Beal. I mean, Bradley Beal's still young. He would obviously that would be amazing for the Pelicans, but I just don't see in this draft the fourth pick being high enough value to be able to return Brad Beal. But hey, I mean, the Wizards might be desperate or something. Anything can happen. It's the NBA. Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't make that trade, but you know, it's not up to me. For sure.
I saw that Washington is trying to get Toronto's general manager.
Yeah.
That would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really hit the Knicks hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in terms of the NBA draft this year, it's basically we already know what's going to happen the first three picks, and the draft doesn't really start till pick four. And now that the Pelicans have it, it's even crazier. But we know that it's going to go Zion and then John Morant and then RJ Barrett will go to the Knicks, and then after that the draft starts. And I think we could see some crazy movement or some interesting picks happening starting at number four.
Matt, I've also seen a rumor, Matt, that JJ Redick will leave the Sixers and go to Lakers.
Did you see that? I haven't seen that. I hope not.
It was on ESPN this morning about players that the Lakers are going to try and sign to rebuild the roster around LeBron and Anthony Davis.
Yeah,
And they need help shooting, and they thought he would be available, and the Lakers have plenty of money.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of, obviously seems like the Nets have interest in Tobias Harris. The Lakers have interest in Jimmy Butler. The Lakers also have interest in Kemba Walker and Kyrie, and I think it's just the Lakers being the Lakers is they have interest in everybody and they think they can get anybody because they're the Lakers. So um, based on what I've seen, I think if the Sixers offer Jimmy Butler the max, I think he stays. I don't know what happens with Tobias. Um, Redick to the Lakers would be interesting. It would definitely be a good fit. Everybody could use 3-point shooting, especially an elite 3-point shooter like Redick. But Redick is also a New York guy. So I'm not sure if he's going to go back to LA when he part of the reason he came to the Sixers was so he could be back on the East Coast. Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of the argument that's been happening. I'm from outside of Philadelphia, so I'm a big Philly sports fan, and happening on the Philadelphia, social media is talking about should you build a top heavy team? The Sixers went all in this year on the top heavy team with Embiid, Simmons, Harris, and Butler, and I mean, looking at it, they were the only team that was able to take the Raptors to 7. So um, it seems like for me, I've always had the opinion that getting as much high end, top end talent as you can, and then you're gonna have people who might take pay cuts. They might be willing to chase rings and take veteran minimums on teams like that. So um, I'm not sure. I think there's definitely an argument to be made for having that. You need to have those role players like the Iguodalas, and honestly, like what Draymond has become is just like a super role player. He's not like flashy or a star in any means, but he does everything that you need um, from a role player position. So getting those super role players is also important too. And I think the market inefficiency right now is looking at rookie deals and getting those guys on rookie deals because you have the ability to control their contracts for a really long time, and you're also able to keep them at a low cost. Whereas as soon as they get off those rookie deals, they start to get really expensive. So yeah, I think there's definitely an argument to be made for both ways. Um, Not sure. It kind of comes down to a lot of different factors. There's no, easy way to build a team. For sure. Yeah, and it's something that the Sixers will have to look at if they lose Tobias Harris and they have that max money still sort of sitting out there. What will they spend it on? So for sure, it's definitely something a lot of teams will be looking at moving forward.
Well, let's talk a little bit about let's talk a little about Golden State because very interesting scenario now. With both of those guys with major injuries, maybe they don't get signed by somebody else. Maybe the Knicks still sign KD because they've got more money and they need to do something anyhow. But Clay, I don't know who's going to take a shot on Clay after the knee surgery, so maybe he stays with Golden State. So maybe Golden State is investing money. I don't know. It's kind of interesting to me, and I actually rooted for Golden State only because they were so banged up. I felt they were David against Goliath. They were so banged up, which is kind of crazy. but that's the way I felt about it.
Yeah, for me, I was also cheering for Golden State. I heard the argument get thrown out there that cheering for the Toronto Raptors is un-American. I thought that was pretty funny, but um, yeah, I was actually cheering for Golden State as well, especially after the injuries, and they sort of did become like the David facing off against Kawhi Leonard's Goliath. It was pretty insane to watch and terrible for the NBA in terms of those injuries happening. We might have no Klay Thompson or Kevin Durant for a whole year, which is crazy. Yeah, so the answer for me is yes. Ben Simmons is an incredible talent, and I see the argument for they don't fit perfectly together right now. Ben Simmons does need to get some semblance of a jump shot to fully maximize his potential. But the thing to remember is that Ben Simmons is still, I think, 22 years old, and he's already an All Star. He should have been an All Star his rookie year. So I think that based on I've always had that thinking of you just get as much top end talent as you can, and you figure out how to fit the pieces around them, and that's why like JJ Redick is such an important example of a player that needs to be on the Sixers because he helps their offense run so much better. Yeah, well he might be shooting with the wrong hand, which is funny and an interesting theory that's thrown out there. He apparently is a much better finisher with his right hand around the rim, so um, people have thrown it out there. They think he's shooting with the wrong hand. Yeah, yeah, I agree, but you know, I don't know. He could be one of those things where he's just so ambidextrous that he's not entirely sure himself. So I'm not sure.
Okay, Matt, my last question for you.
Okay.
Put on your get that crystal
Okay.
ball. How do the Phillies finish, and how do the Eagles look for next
Oh
year?
God. Okay. So the Phillies, I I'm not sure if they'll make the playoffs or not. It's so hard to make the playoffs in baseball right now, and the Braves look pretty good, and they actually just beat the Phillies today 15-1 in a huge series to win that series. So um,
And Coach Mitchell hasn't pitched for him yet.
yeah, yeah, I think the Phillies they have the offensive talent, but they're missing the pitching, the starting pitching. So if they make the playoffs, it'll be close. I think they might get in as a wild card, if at all. The Eagles, um, I the thing with the Eagles is in the NFL is you never really quite know if it's going to be an on year or an off year for certain teams, besides the Patriots, unfortunately. But I think with the Eagles, now that we have Wentz long term, I think Carson Wentz is definitely the franchise quarterback. I love Wentz being here long term. So as long as they can fit the pieces around Wentz and this his receiving core this year with Nelson Aguilar as the third wide receiver, Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey and Zach Ertz, they have so many weapons in the receiving core that if Wentz can't get it done with this receiving core, this is probably the best it's going to get for him. Maybe the whole time he's in Philly. So I like the Eagles this year. The Phillies, I'm iffy on. But hey, the Philadelphia Union are first place in the Eastern Conference in MLS. So there's that.
I guess so. All right. Well, Matt, thanks for joining us. We really
Yeah, of
appreciate it.
course. Thank you guys for having me.
So, Jason, I want to talk about Tyson Fury. I'm telling you, I haven't been excited about boxing since Tyson, and before that, Muhammad Ali. And now we have somebody that's a showman. He's 6'9". He's a monster. He's aggressive. He talks his talk, and he's like I said, a showman. Comes out wearing the Apollo Creed deal, singing "Only in America." I mean, good stuff. And I'm looking forward to a. Go ahead. He did, especially if he signs a Snickers commercial, which they're talking about. But there was just something about. I mean, Ruiz was interesting, and I like that story too. But the Tyson Fury thing, I mean, that's a real to me. That's a real story. He's just such an imposing physical specimen. I would watch him. I might even go pay per view next time he fights. I know. It's that significant for me. It might last 60 seconds. Yeah. You know what? He was a good story though, because you looked at him and nobody could believe the shape he was in. He could box. I mean, I was thinking round mound to rebound. Yep. Hmm. Well, it's good. So boxing could actually be fun again, and after a long, long, long layoff, I think so. I think so. So no, I agree. And now all of a sudden I'm interested in it. Now I've also had the U.S. Open on silent while we're doing the broadcast, and there's three golfers in contention, and now they're putting for bogey almost every time or trying to save par. I mean, they're all falling apart at the same time, and so it's so the leader is still at -11, and then Kepka's come out just ripping it up today. Woodland's at -11, Kepka's at -10, and Rose has fallen off now to -8. So I think Rose has fallen out of it. And when the day started, I said I was going to bet on Kepka just because he's just a monster when he has to be. He can hit some shots that nobody else can hit. So I'm still going to bet on him. I'll see how it goes. But he just teed off and just put it in a drink, put it in a slop again, and he finished -2, which is 9 shots behind the leader. Yep, and that'll be what people talk about. And the people that followed him are happy, and it was still as loud as it's ever been. Yeah, it's been interesting. I started watching the College World Series, and my Vanderbilt team won 3-1 today. One guy drove in all 3 runs. In fact, he led off the game. The first pitch of the game, he hit for a home run. That's always fun to watch. So I love this time of year. Like I said last week on the show, I love watching the College World Series. So I'm looking forward to enjoying that. I'm going to be at the draft in Minnesota. I'm going to be at the draft at the Timberwolves draft party on Thursday night, and I think they're picking like 11th or 12th. So I'm not expecting anything inordinately cool at that event, but I'll be there anyhow. Hmm. Yep. Well, Kawhi Leonard might have had one of the best finals plays performances that I've ever seen in my life. That he just totally took the game and ran with it. He did show a little bit of emotion when they won, which I was glad to see. If he stays, it'll be a big story. It'll be a big story like Russell Westbrook and Paul George, and it gives hope to all the other markets. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, it was a good sports week. Now, entertainment wise, I am all fired up to go see Doctor Sleep when it comes out. So I started reading Doctor Sleep, which I've had on my Kindle for a couple of years and just never got into, just never started it. Not didn't get into it, didn't start it. And then all of a sudden, a good friend of mine reminded me that it was like the sequel to The Shining, and so I immediately picked it up and started reading it, and it's been awesome. I mean, I read in bed last night for like 2.5 hours, and I haven't done that in a long time. So I'm excited to see the movie. No, no, it picks up years later. Right, and, and you got some of the same demons his father had, but he still has the shine. So it's been good. So I'm really looking forward to it. Okay, okay, all right. Did you have a food moment? Okay. Okay. That sounds pretty good. Uh huh. No, I'm not either. No, I'd rather have chicken or turkey. Yeah, I just think I had a food moment this week. I ate a couple places in Kansas City, but nothing I was over the moon about. And I went to Oklahoma Joe's on the way back to the airport, or Kansas City Joe's, which I talked about before on the show. And so that would be the only thing I was. Oh, I would say I had one of your favorite sandwiches at Kansas City Joe's. I had I had a Smoky Joe, which was almost like a burnt end sandwich. It wasn't, like the Smoky Joe that we had in Stillwater was like real finely chopped, right? This was chunky and it was really good. So like a sloppy Joe only with barbecue meat. It is good, but you would love the Smoky Joe at Kansas City Joe's. Yeah, and it was big and it was saucy and it was a beef and pork. It was really good. In fact, the only mistake I made was I got it to go so I could eat it at the airport. And I really needed a knife and fork because it just was a mess. But it was delicious. And like I told you, our next guest in July will be Corey Bernstein from minor league baseball. And if y'all are watching on Saturday mornings, ESPN does a minor league promotion of the week. And yesterday was the main whoopie pies. And they showed the uniforms and the whoopie pies and everything else. And so I can have Corey come on the show and talk about maybe 5 or 6 of the best promotions that you could look forward to or have happened in minor league baseball this year. Yeah, minor league baseball does it right. It's about fun. It's about having a good time. I'm excited about it. And I am going to go to the St. Paul Saints game on Friday night when I'm in Minneapolis, which is an independent minor league team owned by Mike Beck, and they just do some outrageous stuff. So I'll report on that next week as well. Okay. Everybody have a good week, and we'll look forward to having you listen in next week.